Hi, my name's Ken Schaber. I was born with autism, and I was diagnosed with autism when I was like 2 years old. And I have the autistic behaviors I had was I would look away and not pay attention, and used to round objects, and used to be afraid of things until my family worked with me. And
what do you do currently right now?
I do the mail. I run errands and make copies and do all that neat stuff.
Okay. And how is it like living day to day with?
It's okay. And I had trouble with the school system of trying to get the right programs. They wanted me to put me in a larger class with a bunch of retarded kids, and my parents says no, he does not belong in kids with retarded. He needs to be with highly functioning autistic kids and all that. And
how was it? How did your friends react to you, and what kind of friends did you have growing up?
I had pretty good friends, and they didn't understand autism until my neighbor explained and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm. Friends mostly, friends just normal kids, or anybody.
Normal kids, LD kids, normal kids, LD kids, and so forth.
Is there any advice that you could give to me or anyone else, maybe sort of having a similar experience, or maybe just learning about cases like autism or Asperger's or anything?
Is that you gotta work with your kids, and you gotta really fight the legislators and doctors to give them the right programs, right treatments. Because I served on the DD Council trying to get the autism insurance bill passed, I'm on the Consumer Advisory Committee trying to get the insurance bill passed for people with disabilities who need these programs and get jobs and live a normal life.
And you are?
Adrian.
Okay. And what do you do here?
I'm the Associate Director of the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities.
Okay. And how exactly does this card work? What is the organization consist of, or group and such?
We're actually CARD is state funded,
okay.
So we're throughout the state of Florida, and every section of Florida has a Center for Autism that serves them.
Okay.
And we provide free outreach, training, consultation, and support to families of individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
Mm-hmm. How does Asperger's differ from kids or adults and such in terms of development, or if there's any kind of differences like that at all?
You mean from more typically developing?
Yeah, I guess that's the
kids?
best way I can put it, yeah.
Well, Asperger's syndrome is one of the pervasive developmental disorders that people usually call autism spectrum disorders. And it's kind of thought of as a high-functioning autism. Kids with Asperger's syndrome have difficulty with understanding and kind of developing and maintaining social relationships, particularly with same-age peers. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like their brain's wired differently, and they don't innately learn social things that other people just seem to pick up naturally. Mm-hmm. Okay, so people with Asperger's syndrome have well-developed language. They usually have good vocabularies, but they don't necessarily use and understand nonverbal communication very well. So you won't see wide range of facial expressions and use of gestures. They don't use those things as much as other people, and it doesn't always adequately convey their emotional state. Okay, so that also means that they don't necessarily understand the nonverbal communication of others. I always think of the child in school where once you get in upper elementary school, the teacher doesn't give feedback to every child all day long.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there might be 30 kids in a class, and the teacher might walk around the room, and basically, as the teacher walks around the room, she might look at her students, and she might smile and nod her head, and most kids know that means I'm doing fine.
Yeah.
But a child with Asperger's syndrome might not take any kind of message from that, unless the person specifically says, "John, I like I like the way you're sitting and doing your work."
Oh.
So social interactions are confusing. The give and take of social relationships.
Okay.
The other thing is that people with Asperger's syndrome have something, and usually it's thought of as an area of special interest, that they learn about specific things in great detail. That consumes a lot of their time. So they often have special interests they become kind of expert on. And over time, those interests, may change.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of engage in those interests to the exclusion of other things. For example, they might always direct the conversation to their topic of interest. Okay? Or they might not really be willing or very comfortable talking about other things. They're comfortable with kind of their subject or the things they know about.
All right. So, how is the media covered Asperger's in terms of, since it's people have been diagnosed with it, or it's how recent has it been, its findings and that sort of thing.
In terms of Asperger kind of coming into well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, Asperger's only entered the American diagnostic system, or the manual used to diagnose disorders, in 1994. So that's fairly recently. So, in general, the community, including professionals who are in the position to diagnose, have been on a learning curve of really understanding what do the symptoms of Asperger's syndrome look like, because they're so different from person to person. The media, I guess, has brought certainly a lot of attention to autism in general, and there have been some programs specifically on Asperger's. They tend to always go to some extreme. It's either like in an extreme example that doesn't really fit most people with Asperger's syndrome. Like I saw one TV show that showed a boy who was obsessed with washing machines. Now, that's much more likely to happen for a child who more clearly has autism. I don't know anybody who I really think of as having Asperger's syndrome who would be obsessed about washing machines or dates. Okay? So it's a little sensationalistic. They don't really always show milder people who are functioning better. They tend to show something extreme.
Yeah.
Give kind of extreme examples.
Okay.
And I think it's true of the media in general.